a prospect gets 3 messages in one day: a nurture email, an SDR sequence, or a plain account executive outreach. They reply, "Are you coordinated over there?" The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Hello and welcome to Pass the Pitch. At episode five today, we're going to be talking about ownership, collision rules, and credit. So today is about preventing the buyer from getting hit with mixed messages. Ownership rules protect the customer experience in the relationship. So welcome back to episode 5. I'm here with Leslie Vickrey, and we're going to get a chance to be able to dig under the covers. What do you think causes some of these disconnects, Leslie?
Oh my goodness, from the buyer experience and ownership of the customer experience in the relationship. First, I will say if ownership is unclear and the buyer feels it, more than likely they do feel it. And I want to start by saying trust is built with the buyer, even when it's not with the sales rep. Trust is built when they are doing things like looking on review sites. They're looking at your website. Is what you told me, Anna, in the sales call, does that match what I'm seeing in the, on your website or in the follow-up material you sent me? Or when I go online and read reviews about your culture and what it's like to work with your company, does it all match? And quite frankly, today more than ever, when the buyers are going out on LLMs, which they are, we're seeing this more and more often, and they're searching to learn more about companies like yours. They're actually going to ask, who does this company compete with? And why should I buy from them instead of this other company? It'd be interesting for you to see what comes up, because some of it's in the salesperson's control and some of it's out of it. So you really have to think about, when the ownership is unclear, the buyer feels it, but you also can build that trust by making sure every touch point people own that experience, including obviously sales and marketing together.
Excellent points. And that's part of, the research that's required up front. The buyers are the most educated that they've ever been in my lifetime, right? So this is where salespeople need to be just as educated when they go in. This is why it gets a little emotional, I feel. Credit impacts pay, recognition, and trust, right? When rules are not clear, people start protecting themselves, right? That's a human reaction. So clear rules do bring a calm to the organization, but also it gives you a calm presence with the client where you can establish that credibility with the client. Let me talk a little bit about a recent example where there was a duplicate outreach that took place. So a prospect gets 3 messages in one day: a nurture email that they might have written or used AI to do, an SDR sequence, or a plain account executive outreach. They reply, "Are you coordinated over there?" Right? Because there's internal confusion, because they're getting bombarded three different ways. And the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Yeah, 100%. I think usually when you're looking at that left hand, right hand, and people not knowing what you're doing, or you had mentioned collision earlier and collision rules and giving credit principles. If let's just use as an example with collision rules, we'll just start there. If inbound intent is high, then you really want to make sure inbound is a priority within your campaigns. If the sales organization is focused heavily, which quite frankly, I think both sales should always be on, regardless of the state of if you're hitting your numbers, not hitting your numbers as a person, individual, performer, or company. But when you have limited resources, let's say your nurture or always on has to slow down, and the shift of the tone to support active motion. If both motions are active, you have to assign an owner who owns which message and stream. So for example, if sales is really focused on outbound and marketing is focused on inbound, then we need to know when inbound comes in and it's qualified, what does that qualified mean? Again, making sure we're all speaking the same language. And when does it get handed off to sales to make sure they can do it? because they're so busy on the nurture front. So you don't want to, give them so much that they can't handle that. Good problem to have. And I think we could all solve that problem if that were a problem. But you want to make sure those roles are clear on who's handling, which motion and so forth. And also to reward speed and give credit to collaboration. So it doesn't matter who touched it first. Anna, you have one of my favorite case studies on this when you were in a sales leadership role selling solutions at a staffing company, and the sales reps was trying to get in touch with the CIO at a company, not having any success. They were the first touch point out. That same CIO happened to see your podcast that was on LinkedIn, and they watched the podcast, and then they put two and two together, and they said, wow, I love what that's saying. Oh my gosh, that's the company that the sales rep keeps trying to get in touch with me from. I'm going to reach out to said sales rep and talk to them. So when that happened, they also wanted you as the SME, the solutions SME, to be on that call. So you were able to join the sales rep, join that CIO, and put all of those touches together. You influenced that sale. You may not have been that first person who reached out, the sales rep was, but they couldn't get that CIO to respond. But when we tracked that source to see where it came from, and then we could see how marketing influenced that pipeline through that podcast and thought leadership podcast, you can tell influence matters. I mentioned it on an earlier episode. That deal was more likely to close because it was marketing influenced. No one's trying to take credit. They're just saying, look we're better together. When marketing and sales partners, that trust, it built trust with the CIO, it built trust with you and the sales rep. It built trust, quite frankly, with marketing too, to help get that deal to close faster.
I love that, and I do recall that, but the power in that is bringing the right resources in, having the multi-touch point, and how marketing played such a critical component in tying it all of it together. That's why it's unfortunate sometimes when you do see misalignment between the groups and the communication is not there. I'll give an example of a collision scenario. There was an account executive that's working on an account and someone downloads pricing. So AE wants to reach out fast with intent-based messaging, right? And marketing supports with coordinated contact. Now, scenario B is where the SDR is mid-sequence and the account attends an event and SDR references the event, marketing pauses, generic, like there's that disconnect, right? Because again, the left hand is not telling the right hand what's happening, and that's unfortunate. I think our call to action today is write your collision rules in a one page and share them with both teams. Right. And again, this can be an evergreen process. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be usable. And the comments that I would ask you to respond to in the comment section is, where do you see the most collisions today? Is it inbound versus outbound? Is it your SDRs versus your account executives, or marketing versus sales in plain English? Thank you once again.
Thanks, Anna.